Well, no, it does not officially exist. It's not registered as a company. It files no tax returns. It is the Wagner Group, and it's probably one of the most influential organisations you've never heard of. The Wagner Group is a mercenary private army, mainly composed of troops who once served in the Russian armed forces. It was created to fight in Ukraine, and it's believed to be in the country now. And because it's a private entity, the Russian government can deny involvement in what it does. And what it does goes far beyond the borders of Europe. Recently, French forces left the African state of Mali after the country's leaders there asked the Wagner Group to deal with an Islamist insurgency. Out went the French. Well, the security specialist and CEO of International Corporate Protection Group is Will Geddes, who joins me now. Will, thanks for coming in. Who are they?
They're a very interesting outfit, Colin. They've been around since about 2014. And quite often we see in some of these conflict zones a lot of private military companies that get engaged. But most of these, albeit quite secretive and somewhat covert and registered in all sorts of interesting places like the BVI or the Cayman or Delaware, for example, will be operating, recruiting former soldiers. But the Wagner Group is even more insidious. There are private military companies which do very, very good work, and they will fill that void where conventional military operational forces can't actually provide or supply forces or the capabilities that are necessary to suppress incursions or enemies. But the Wagner Group is very, very interesting because it certainly seems to appear the Russian state deny their existence, but there's a lot that ties them to their Ministry of Defense. And the way that they operate is primarily, again, ex-Russian forces personnel, a lot of Spetsnaz and special operations personnel, and they've been featured in a lot of parts of dark Africa, from Rwanda right through to Libya. They've been in Syria, they've been in Venezuela, they've been in all parts of the world, and quite often really kind of sanctioned unofficially by the Russian government, but they're utilised for plausible deniability. So they can carry out these operations without it being seen on the surface to be Russia's state assets.
And as you say, I mean, there's absolutely nothing new in soldiers of fortune.
No.
They've been around as long as soldiering's been around for, haven't they? There were British mercenaries in Africa in recent decades. But this idea that not only are they privately paid for, but they're still directed from on high by Moscow, that's the key thing.
Yeah, that's the key thing. And so their operations, for example, the Ukraine is a great case in point, where certain actions can be attributed to separatists and could be seen as these sort of rogue forces that are not working under the state banner. And therefore, groups like Wagner can come into those types of operations, carry out what can be surgically precise attacks and devastating impact on the localities. But again, the state can turn around, Putin can turn around and say, well, this is not an official action by Russia. But I think this is the beginning of a number of other similar actions where Wagner's name may crop up again.
Will Geddes, I know you're going to be around for another minute or so, but Lynn May, a columnist, is going to be alongside me for the next couple of hours, having been with me a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking during the commercial break about to what extent, if you are somebody under 30, what the Ukraine crisis means to you. While Will's still here, let's just talk about it now. You're following it closely, Lynn. But online, your cohort, what do they make of it? It's big.
I think there's differences because some people are saying, why are we getting involved? Ukraine is not our NATO member. What's it got to do with us? We've already suffered with regards to the pandemic, so on and so forth. But I don't think people realise that if this goes ahead or there is a crisis in the region, it can affect us. We're already going to experience, energy prices in terms of it being hiked in April. And we get the majority of it from Norway. And the Prime Minister has already said in Norway that they're at maximum in terms of supplying energy. So we are going to struggle in terms of prices going up because there's going to be issues in terms of energy supplies. Again, Ukraine, wheat, barley, it will impact us with that. And that's why it can affect us in terms of everyday people.
It's interesting, Will, isn't it? There is a sort of consumer angle to this potential conflict, isn't it? Whether it's in the price of the miller's wheat or whether it's the gas, the oil. But actually, there are other groups that look to this and see different opportunities and threats. Some of your old erstwhile colleagues in the military might be looking at this and thinking, well, crikey, don't want to get sucked into this. Others might think, actually, the military is relevant again in this country. We can expect more spending.
Yeah, and I think we should do. I mean, there's a lot that is being underreported at the moment, as you and I have been discussing, Colin, one of which is, and this directly affects everybody, and this is in terms of the data links and the cabling which is under the sea, the increase in Russian submarine activity, and the fact that one of those cables has already been attacked by Russian submarines. Now, if they go further to taking out the other cables and then the redundancy that's in place, we're going to lose GPS. I don't want to terrify the viewers here, but there's some very large implications that will affect all of us.
Well, I've been saying this for months now, Will, that we've been worried about the COVID virus for obvious reasons, and we worry about our resilience in the face of it. What if the next virus is a cyber virus, and suddenly we've done away with cash, for instance, our resilience in terms of just-in-time supply chains and all the rest of it. I forget how many days of food supply we have in this country before things, as Ben Wallace, Defence Secretary, might say, go tonto. But, it's not very long.
No, it isn't. And I think we've got to bear in mind, when we look at the markets, the financial markets yesterday, and how the markets have spiked significantly, and also the cost of gas has actually increased exponentially in light of the fact of the Nord Stream 2 also being cancelled by Germany. There are a lot of implications which are going to hit over. And so even if we're drawing gas from, say, through LNG containers from Qatar, which is, to me, probably one of the most logical cases, it's still going to take time for that shipment to come into the UK. So we've got this drop time, this business continuity and life continuity that we've got to consider in terms of what is happening right now in Ukraine, but also on a macro picture, what is going to happen in the longer term of what Putin's plans eventually are for other Balkan states and Baltic areas.
Will, come and talk to us again sometime about those undersea cables, because that feels like a subject that's going to interest a lot of our viewers. But for now, we'll say thank you. And I know that hot seat's about to be, you're about to vacate it, and somebody else will be in there like Flint, as you say. But thanks very much indeed, Will, for now.